So let us know if you want to start, Peter, and who wants to read the
I can.
thing.
Okay, thanks.
All right. The Pellin Credo, Ground Rules for the Peter Fleming Forum. The ground rules in the Pellin Credo are designed to support a safe, nourishing environment. We ask that you come to the meeting with a clear head, free of the influence of drink and drugs. 2. In any Pellin setting, you keep control of the pace and depth of your sharing. You may pass or say no to any suggestion. Your no will be accepted and not judged or analyzed. No means no. 3. Even though the meetings are recorded, we ask that people respect the confidentiality of those present and do not share anything they heard outside the meeting. 4. In Pellin work, we have a strict no gossip rule. No gossip means we do not talk about anyone who is not present, even in a pleasant way.
Okay, thank you. You know the routine. I'm Peter and I'm in Norfolk, England.
You calling on us?
Oh, sorry, Johnny.
Hello, my name's Johnny Avila from Los Angeles. Having some technical difficulties today, but I'm going to work it out. Thank you.
Okay. Mary?
Mary in Rosarito Beach, Mexico.
Cynthia?
Cynthia in Kankakee, Illinois.
Stacy?
I'm Stacy, and I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Elizabeth?
I'm Elizabeth. I'm from Eugene, Oregon.
Cease?
Wait a minute. Yes, I'm from Tampa, Florida today, and unfortunately I'm on my phone, and I have to leave early today.
That's okay. Okay. Right. What I want to present today, and I want to find a way to sort of present it straight, is what we call in Pellin work authority. And, you know, some of what I'm doing here will be repetitive, but I think it's a concept that's well worthwhile getting a head around, getting a real feel for it. Because we're using authority in a jargon way. We're not using authority in the way it's usually used at all. And what authority means in Pellin is the accomplishments that we have achieved in our life and the way those accomplishments come together so we are recognized. Recognized by the people we want to be recognized, but often recognized by the community in which we live, by the society in which we lived. So we're paid for the contributions we make. Authority is just it's not just paid work, but it's a great deal of authority is paid work. And even the authority that is not paid, it is almost lives within the part of human life that means we're making a contribution that's valuable, and one way or another we'll get food, clothing, and shelter in return for that contribution we're making. We often represent, I don't have visual aids, and I'll try and work with Cynthia about this. We often represent authority by a box, okay? David, and you've seen it in the, if you remember the truth diagram where we say we've only got a little bit of the truth and we don't have it all, and then the memory links diagram of the pendulum. David Pellin did a lot of things with diagrams. He sort of, he put across his work in these rather simple diagrams, and as I've said here, and I think it's what I'm going to do on Wednesday. He had at one point he had a triangle, he sort of parallel with the pendulum, and I think as we take this work forward, I do want to get at the power of these diagrams. So, in a way,
Excuse me, Peter.
yeah,
Somebody has come into the waiting room whose name I don't recognize, and maybe you do, Nicholas Heller. I'm going to let him in, but I'll have to kind of
yeah, no, I don't
don't recognize him.
recognize
So
the
let's see
name.
if it's okay.
Yeah.
Let me just ask. Oh, it's Shelley. Shelley, I was getting ready to ask you questions in case you were an intruder.
Will you
This is
please
Nicholas
identify
Heller.
yourself at the door? Are you over the age of 18?
Okay, sorry.
No, that's all right. So hi, Shelley.
I
Well,
am on the iPad because I can't get my computer to work right now. So
yeah, we're talking about David Pellin's concept of authority, and he sort of drew a box, and in a way, that's our authority, and it's full of it's full of items that we accumulate over time, from high school diplomas to college to work experience to a resume that covers what we have done in our life. So, but to come back.
Can I just say a little something?
Yeah, sure.
I was just going to say, I was just thinking about the diagram, and I was thinking how interesting that it's a box because it's a structure, but it's also one of the tools that isn't related to feeling. It's related to, what you've done in the world. It's about the material world, which in symbols it is often represented by a square. So that's I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So what authority is in a way it's a skill set. One way to look at it. In a way, it's work. Okay. And Freud made this statement that I think had an indelible influence. The statement was, what he did with the statement made an indelible influence. The statement itself, unfortunately, didn't. Someone asked him once, how would he describe a fulfilled person? No, how would he describe a healthy person? Sorry. How would he describe a healthy person? And what he said, someone who is fulfilled in work and love. And then, in my view, proceeded to forget about work. There's not much place in Freudian analysis for how not having the right work causes mental illness. that's putting it straightforwardly. So what David Pellin came up with, because in terms of our emotional backgrounds, our emotional strengths and weaknesses, we've got all that in the Pellin work around memory links, and memory links is a huge part of our work. And that is the emotional side of our life, and the ways we get emotional needs met about memory links. But David Pellin came along and developed this concept of authority, which he taught, I think I would say, with a certain emotional power. Dave sort of taught with body language. If you've seen the film, you could get a sense of that. And so he just developed this concept of authority and sort of put it out there. And I want to make it very understandable. What authority means in this sense is not authority over people, but authority in a field of work or study. So someone is an authority in Shakespeare, or an authority in American history, or is an authority as a master chef. Authority in something. And of course, it, from the political dimension of Pellin, which is becoming more important to me, privileged classes have always had a lot of authority in things as well as authority over. But one of the, and it was my early work, which was with young people who committed crimes and went to prison for those crimes. What used to be, it feels like a very dated language now. It used to be called juvenile delinquency. Yeah, kids who broke the law and got into trouble because they broke the law. You know, and they, you know, essentially came from, in the main, from less privileged classes, and they still come from less privileged classes, and all the issues around social justice, prejudice. I think you could say that, and racial prejudice, one of the things that happens within all that conflict within society, which is, I don't think there's much doubt, it's going to increase until the conflict is going to increase until there's some progress. My prediction. In a way, that's all about authority. You know, it's keep people, yes, because there's a certain authority in having good health coverage. And, you know, I'm in England, and we just take that for granted. I mean, all we do is complain about it when it's not good enough. And complain heavily when it's not good enough. But there's never a question of not having it, ever. It doesn't cross anybody's mind. It doesn't cross anybody's mind that you're going to get into trouble financially if you get ill. In fact, it's handy. The man who put the English National Health Service in place after the Second World War was a man called Aneurin Bevan, and that's his book. And his book is called In Place of Fear, because, you know, the totally accepted here, you should not have to have any financial fears about your health. Enough fears about health in itself. Anyway, so I guess having health cover in that way, in a sense, is authority, and certainly when people don't have that, it's a threat to their whole life. So authority, in a way, is that which is tangible, sort of priceable. It, you know, has a place in the market. It's worth something. There is a way that authority is almost a formal worth, and it's a very well, it's a very original concept. I don't think it's anywhere else in the field. It's touched on in other ways, but it sort of covers all that part of our life that we know we have. You know, we know we have a job. We know we get paid from the job. We know we have benefit from the state. We know we have health coverage. So authority gives us a place in the world, gives us standing in the world. In a way, one way to see authority, or what I want to get across is a feel for what it is. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do here. That in a way, there is authority in our passport. Now, we can take our passport just for granted, okay? You know, I've got a Canadian passport. I live in England. I'm sure most of you have American passport. Mary's got an English passport and American passport. Now, we sort of take it for granted. But if someone doesn't have a passport, and in America, if someone is an undocumented immigrant, the children of an undocumented immigrant, the dream kids, you know, you can see the power of the authority of having the right to be in the country, the power of authority in having the legal right to be there. So our concept of authority covers all that. It's sort of, and to some extent, it's where we're placed where we are in the world, and how we are placed by it. So, in terms of, I'm fiddling for a pen. Sorry. In terms of the box, you know, we have all these bits in it, sort of that make up our authority. Okay. And they add up and they give us power in the world. Yeah, Mary.
I just wanted to say that I have this fledgling authority now, which is I've been on stage once and done my show once. I did a couple of readings, but I've done my show once. And so I can truthfully say I'm an actress. All the classes I did and even the readings I did, I hadn't gone before a paid audience. And if the pandemic had hit 2 weeks earlier, I wouldn't have that fledgling authority because I wouldn't have been on stage in front of an audience. So it's I can feel the difference between being able to say I'm an actress of my own one-woman show and being a hopeful if I hadn't had a chance to do it.
and you get into the complexities of authority there. Because then I can't remember the terminology, but to get parts in England, I think it's the same in America, you've got to belong to, you've got to have your card, you've got to have your guild. And I can't, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it.
It's called equity here.
Yeah, it's called equity.
Card.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called here. So you've got to have that. And that's authority. So you have, as you said, fledgling authority, and to have authority in that field, you've got to have that card, piece of paper, fulfill those requirements, fulfill those requirements. And I think you're right, the bit you said, when you see someone who's just achieved authority, it's, they almost go in front of your eyes. So someone who struggled to get citizenship, and then they go through the process of getting citizenship. Someone who's graduating from high school, graduating from college, being accepted into a job. Our authority fills us up with a sense of self-worth. And of course it's got, and if that's the case, then if people are denied authority, they will have less chance of feeling fulfilled. They'll feel less than they need to be. To take stark examples, one way to strip a human being of what we call the sense of well-being that we call authority, enslave them, okay? Turn them into a slave, where, they no chance of having authority.
Or in America, that the kind of replacement of slavery with sending such a huge proportion of black and brown men in particular to jail, criminalizing them, and then they can't get a job because they've got stuff on their record. That's a very surefire way of depriving authority.
So in a way, Elizabeth.
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt a thought, but I had sort of a question.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's easier to gain other types of authority once you have one kind, that your first authority is the hardest to get? I'm thinking of an example that's a little funny, but when I became a mother, when I catered a bunch of events, some of them for pay, when I graduated college, all of a sudden things like my passport and like my bank card, and I think that it could be argued that a bank account can be considered a kind of authority, became easier to hold on to and keep track of. Whereas when I didn't have any of those things, I was always losing my papers.
Yeah, I think Italians have an expression, documenti, that, life evolves around having the right documents at the right time, okay? you know, a country that can be both chaotic and brilliant and bureaucratic. So if you say to an Italian, documenti, 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 you know exactly what you're talking about. And it's not having the right papers. That's sort of what it represents. Or do have the right, make sure you have the right papers. And, you know, not having a bank account, yeah, we lose our bank card. You know, I think we can feel sort of what a loss of authority is like until we get another one. But to be deprived of rights is to deprive people often of the authority they already had, like the people who were kidnapped from Africa and brought to America, enslaved in America. They had rights where they were, you know, and then they had authority where they were, and that's all taken away.
Can I just say, I'm thinking of migrants too, you know, people who are doctors in their own country or psychotherapists in their own country, and their qualifications don't count in America, so they're tax, or the UK, so they're tax compliant.
Yeah.
That's a very big loss of authority. It's kind of hard.
Yeah, there was a famous example, I can't remember the name. It was after the Hungarian, in history, it was after the Hungarian people rose up against the communist regime and then were crushed. A lot of people escaped. One man escaped, and he worked in Boston as a cleaner in a hospital, and he was very good at it. And during that time, he also learned the language. He was very careful to learn the language. He studied very hard, and they really liked what he did, so they called him in for an interview to give him a promotion of supervising all the cleaners in the hospital. He just quietly said, you know, I'm really sorry, I appreciate your generosity, but I have to refuse that because I have my papers in order and I've been appointed to the Faculty of Medicine at University of California, Berkeley. Okay. He's this sort of prominent guy. And yeah, he had no authority, and he had authority, lost it, claimed it back. Yes, Cynthia.
One of the things that, and I had just been to a conference a couple of weeks ago, and that was talking about intersectionality, and it was with respect to race, gender, and it was a real interesting one because, and I'm thinking there's a sense with prejudice of a certain, and why it's so hard to get rid of it in some ways is because you have, I don't know if this is true, you might have said this because I stepped away for a minute, but it's sort of like a sense of prejudice, of authority that you haven't earned. They talked about privilege. For example, and the speaker, she did a great job. She did a really strong list of both her advantages, her privileges and her disadvantages. Like, for example, she talked about that she was of mixed race, but she was perceived as African American. She was a woman, but she was educated at the University of Chicago, and she listed them all. And she also talked about a privilege being advantages you have that you didn't earn, and the effect of disability, I forget the word she used, but there's disadvantages that you didn't earn, and that they're part of the system. For example, for example, I'm a woman, so I have disadvantages, because I'm a woman, and there's still many. I'm gay, and you could say whether or not I don't believe that's a choice, but but I'm also white, and there's some advantages that I have had, and some authority I have because of the fact that I'm white. And looking at that, and she's talking about astrology and looking at that as an astrologer and when you're dealing with your clients, but it seemed to be very much related to authority, and some of the privilege seems to be authority that you have that really, I mean, there's authority that you've earned from doing stuff, but I think in society there may be a lot of authority that you didn't necessarily earn. So in terms of
No,
your
you're
race.
right. I mean, you can inherit authority, okay? And you know, if I take I can't remember his name, I just know the story of the Hungarian doctor who, you know, came to America and got his career back on track because, you know, before he left Hungary, he was world-ranking medical doctor. But I reckon if you went into that man's background and who could make that transition relatively easily and even turn it into a sort of story, as I've told the story, I bet in his background, there were probably I'm speculating, but probably generations of doctors, right? You know, generations of educated people. And, you know, one of the ways I want to, you know, get the concept across is simply how powerful it can be in looking at social and political issues in this time, because over and over again, people denied this authority. And there's an authority in going to the march and holding up the placard. But that authority historically tends to be fleeting if you don't turn it into rights. It is fleeting if you don't turn it into rights. I mean, what would happen to the nature of authority in America if, you know, the state-run universities were free, and everyone had people had an access to authority in a way they don't have now.
Can I give an example of authority?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of just popped into my head, a childhood friend who didn't know what to do with himself, and I think he was in his late 20s, and he just got a job just to have a job as a porter in a hospital. And from his proximity to the medical field, he went on to become a doctor.
Yeah.
Which must have been a long journey from being a hospital porter.
Yeah, people do. People develop authority. I mean, people get scholarships and become champion basketball player. And you can, I don't know the name. I don't follow basketball that much. I'm not excited to it. But, you know, a star woman basketball player, and has joined the sports people who are putting together, you know, vote, putting together the campaign to prevent voter suppression. Wow, did this young woman have authority when she was talking? You know, and yeah, I guess if you're in the championship basketball team, you have authority and comes out of you. And of course, in our work, it's authority plus performance life force. But you know, she was given that opportunity. go through college on a scholarship and then become a professional sports person. Someone who's cut off from that doesn't get a chance, because one of the things that authority is the opportunity to develop our talent. And that's got political ramifications, because if the people who are opposed to me politically, if I can stop them developing their talent, then I can keep the power. But if they can develop their talent, then I'm faced with serious opposition. Both our concepts of, well, three really: purpose, contribution from hurt, and authority, have got real political implications, serious ones. Anyone want to comment on this? Do you want to comment on it, Johnny? Somebody else when Johnny comes back? Elizabeth.
So I've been thinking a lot about disability and especially the ways in which people with physical disability or with learning disability are prevented from accumulating authority, especially in the realms in which they need it most, which is related to their disability. I'm thinking of my brilliant sister who has multiple physical disabilities that prevent her from accumulating authority in medicine by going to medical school, even though she has a keen interest and would have a lot of contribution to make. Because the way medical school and residency is set up, it's survival of those with the most stamina. And in a way that, you know, having a private practice at a doctor would not require.
Yeah.
And how that's an artificial barrier, and how things like that create a situation where, you know, I was looking up disability dyad, and they almost always mean the disabled person and some kind of caregiver or support person, when some of the most functional situations I've seen with disability are where two people have compatible disabilities and help each other. And, you know, how to break down the barriers that are artificial and encourage people with disabilities to acquire the kind of authority that could really allow them to contribute.
Yeah. That's a straight application of this work, okay? And then I guess you know that if someone can survive all the stress and get the authority. You know, we sort of know what a success story looks like. As I've mentioned here, I have done a lot of work in fostering. And what you tend to get in fostering, you get the sort of success stories, okay? You know, the people who've come through that system and done well, and maybe done staggeringly well. That, you know, they become actresses, they become TV personalities, they're successful in business, whatever. And it's just sort of motivational speaker approach. You know, if we, you know, follow your dream, believe in your dream. If you do that, everything will work out. Maybe the world's a little bit harder than that. So with this, we're looking at, okay, what is stopping these people with a disability getting a chance to develop the authority? And what are the stages in that? And again, you know, a claim I make for this work, it can be very precise. Okay, I mean, someone has authority or they don't, and that's why I use examples like passports. You know, someone has rights in America, and there's huge authority there, and then those rights are wiped away and they're deported. You know, someone with a disability doesn't get the chance to develop authority. And of course, if people have authority, they are going to be making contributions, and they're going to be making contributions that from which everybody is better off. And if they're not making contributions, then people without authority have to survive, and they'll survive in ways that cost the community and the society a great deal of money. Simply a great deal of money and resources. So the way people are threatened, because, you know, what is the threat that someone doesn't want to help someone with a disability build authority? It will be a very challenging question. Now, from our point of view, there's the political edge of the work. There's something going on there.
Peter,
Yeah.
with LA Unified, I tried to do the district intern in 2 years, but they said because it's a special program, the state would only let me do it in 3. I wanted to
Say
do it
that
in
again.
4.
Say that again, see.
Los Angeles Unified School District. I was taking a district intern program, but I got nothing the first year because of my learning disabilities. So I wanted to do it in 4 years. I said, I'm willing to put the effort in. I'm willing to stay at intern status. And they said, no, we can't. It's a state thing.
Yeah.
The state will only let you do it in 3 because this is a special program giving you a shortcut to a credential.
Yep.
Instead of a master's degree. So I was so
Yeah.
disappointed.
So, you know, what's
That's
going on?
exactly the
Yeah, I
kind of
guess-
thing I mean.
Say again.
That's exactly the kind of thing I was talking about.
Yes. And we would say if you're preventing people developing authority, and an authority that will work for them, from which they'll be able to make contributions in which they feel fulfilled and happy. You know, what are you doing? Okay, you know, almost using the concept to make people at least look at the possibility that if disabled people do well, I'm not disabled. What does that mean about me that I'm not doing so well? I mean, you know, what are the dynamics in there? Yeah, Cynthia.
Well, I think that's what I was trying to, where I was going a little bit when I was thinking about the advantages that you don't earn and why, like, and not just with disabilities, I mean, with race and people. And I've been astounded at just how mean some people are. I mean, and I think it's that whole thing with the threat to authority, because I think there may be this sense of, holding on to the sort of the easy authority that you didn't, that just came because you were born a certain race or you were born a certain gender. Because that's one thing that's just been puzzling me. It's just how mean people are about it. I mean, yes, there's unintentional, but there's some like really, and just recently with all the stuff going on in the United States, I just, and that's where I'm thinking about that whole, maybe people are mean because they feel threat to this authority they have, but they know it's not something, maybe deep inside it's not something, giving authority because you're white is not something that I mean, and even it's, you know what I'm saying, it's not something that's, it's not earned. It's not even earned in your generation. I mean, if you've gone through, having generational wealth and being able to build generational wealth was one of the things that the speaker was talking about. Even that's something your family did that you're building on. But just, I don't know, that, I'm sorry, but I was thinking of that in terms of threat and authority, and that might explain the nastiness that some people have.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the ways we put that into the Pellin tools is looking at attraction, hurt, and callousing. And I think it's a useful word. I like the word nice, which is the opposite of nasty. And as you know, I like simple language rather than complex academic language. But yeah, how do people come this nasty? And they do, sometimes it comes out. The sheer nakedness of racial persecution and racial superiority. The sheer evil of it. But then that seems to sort of spread out in the peripheral. And yeah, people are just mean and nasty. And our concept of callousing has got some real answers about that, real answers. People don't start off being like that. But over time, they hurt, they callous to the hurt. They're hurting someone else, they callous that. They're hurting someone else, they callous that. Hurting someone else, they callous that. I mean, you can see it in American policemen, how they've calloused to the absurdity. I mean, from the outside world, why are you cops dressed like soldiers? It doesn't make any sense. They're cops, they're not soldiers. But, a callous. They build up slowly over time. And then I think someone's sense of authority, because this is a sort of combination of the tools, someone's sense of their own authority, they've got a whole lot of threatened calluses that represent threat around them, then they become so easily threatened that they'll be threatened by anyone. anybody. And I guess they can turn, because I think if you put the concept of authority, overlay the political struggles with the concept of authority, it can make a lot of sense. Mary, do you want to comment on any of that?
Oh, I was just quietly thinking about some of the movement Black Lives or Black Lives Matter Zoom meetings I've been to. And one of the reasons it was so nice listening to the Black leaders was that they had that calmness that comes from authority.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of surety of like, we want you to choose to listen to us, white people. It wasn't only white people there, but I'm just saying this is how I felt as a white person. And whether or not you listen to us, we're the ones that hold the authority about the Black experience.
Yeah. And also some of that comes from, they sort of grew up with mothers who told them, you know, you've got to work twice as hard as a white kid. That was sort of routine, and they did.
And then there's that quite young still educator and academic that I posted in the Pellin Institute group called Dr. Luke Wood. And I told the story in the group about
What's the name again? I missed the name.
Luke Wood, Dr. Luke Wood, W-O-O-D. And he deliberately is transparent when he's giving presentations, because he was fostered and then adopted, him and his brother, by a white couple, and they were the only Black kids in the whole school, in a quite privileged area, I think. And the teacher suspended him, sorry about this, there's background noise. The teacher suspended him in 5th grade 42 times in 1 year. And what he did with that, I was writing about contribution from hurt, but it's what he did was, I'm going to get an authority so I can change this situation. And that's what he writes about to the T of, he focuses on Black males. He translated his personal anguish about that and the unfairness of it into going right through to getting a PhD and giving presentations and becoming an authority in what happens to Black boys and Black men who get criminalized, and how it's the same process. But I thought that was really wonderful story. I'm so glad he was transparent about that part of it. It's nice.
That's what and you know, I acknowledge that and acknowledge the success of people who come through like that. But in terms of access to authority, I guess I want to try and find a way on a political level to present it. Yeah, you know, the only people who play baseball, people who play baseball who aren't in the major leagues, right? As well as those who are in the major league. There's something about the ordinary run of people developing authority, overcoming because the you know, the figures you said are staggering. The number of times he ran into trouble at school, and he was obviously a good student. Good, what he did with his career, someone only had to, and they couldn't bear it. And what it means when someone is not given the opportunities, and someone really highlighting what it means to stop people having an opportunity to develop their authority and find their purpose. That's, I think, where we want this sort of work to come from a lot. And I guess within this, I feel we've got the opportunity to put together what I like to call the psycho-political factors, which, and it's another point of mine for another time, that on our side of the divide, it's always been sort of between, the personal and the political, between therapy and the political. I feel, and the psychotherapeutic side, we've done something so our wisdom, our authority is not recognized as widely as it could be because of what we've done. I think in using these tools, I guess the way we've developed our authority, we wanted to have something that was sort of elite, and we were somehow or other more authentic people because we were doing therapy, or we were helping people. And within that, I believe we lost a certain humanity that's about doubt and presenting doubt. So we'd be more acceptable, and we come across as know-it-alls, and within that, people want to hang around long enough to see our faults and then label us as our faults, and then they don't have to let in our insight, which could be very challenging to them, very, very challenging to them. So it's the psychopolitical factors that I sort of want to bring together. And that, that has issues in terms of looking at the way groups or societies or families. Yeah, I guess there was a time when, another time in history, another time in human evolution, where if there were resources to get the children educated, they'd be spent on the boys, not the girls. So the boys would have an easier track to authority than the girls would. And I feel these tools can nail some of those questions, particularly as we're putting together, we believe in a real connection between sorry, I've lost my thread for a minute. Yeah, put together a real connection between lack of authority and mental illness, just straight across the board. A cause of mental illness is people not having the right authority. And because authority gives us the chance to get feelings of accomplishment. And if we don't get feelings of accomplishment, we get ill. So if we don't get feelings of accomplishment, we will get mentally ill, and then someone can write a case history that points to the problems in this person's past, the problems in this person's family that were the cause of their mental illness. And we're coming along and saying, yes, that can be the case, but it can also be the case that someone is mentally ill not because of stuff in their family, but because they don't have the authority they need to have. In a way, this is sort of common sense. I think the particular framework we put around it, if we can get it across really clearly, is powerful. Because it's not quite the same as if someone doesn't have the right job, they'll be mentally ill. But in some way that's true. And when you talk of the people who come through a nasty system, to use Cynthia's word, people who come through a nasty system and do really, really well, you know, they've found a way to overcome all the barriers, and they've found a way. And of course, that's where our concept of contribution from hurt is, you know, a powerful point of explanation, because they took the hurt and turned it into something positive. Someone else took the hurt and it affected them so deeply they became a drug addict or they became a prostitute. I mean, that we know that's the case. So one of the things we want to do with these tools is make something that's quite precise. Okay, these people are going to make it, these people are not going to make it. How can our tools explain the people who do make it, but at the same time make a contribution to the people who are not making it? Anyone like to come in with examples? Stacey, would you?
I don't have an example, but I just thought authority is kind of like expert and expertise.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then it's also authority also has a element in it, and that's why we have the box. It's got to be accepted, okay? But we might have the
accepted
right
effort.
Yeah, because we might have the expertise, but if it's not accepted by society, by professions, by universities, it may not go where it needs to go.
Right.
So it's expertise that is recognized, okay?
Expertise that is recognized.
Yeah, Cynthia.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of things I was thinking about just in my own life. I mean, I went through big career changes. I mean, right now as an astrologer, this is my third. I mean, it's kind of what I've always wanted to do, but I never thought, in part because it wasn't authority that was recognized. And in fact, and I didn't think. Of course, now I'm kicking myself because now I don't have, even though I've been studying and doing it, and I'm just starting out now, I don't have the authority that I would have had I actually done what I wanted to do, you know, decades ago. But I was also thinking about the painfulness of, you know, I was a divorce lawyer for 10 years, and I had developed some authority in that. I mean, I had worked in a fairly respected law firm in there, and then I went out on my own and I had my own practice, and that whole experience of, you know, and there were a lot of things. I mean, there was the economy, there was the fact that I think I had I had started losing some of my calluses, and there was just some hurt I couldn't handle. But part of it, I think it wasn't ever really, it wasn't what was in my heart. I mean, I think I could have gotten through all that, but the painfulness of going through bankruptcy, and that, that's just a real rough thing when you lose some authority that you had. I mean, I was grateful. I mean, because I was miserable. By the end of it, I was pretty miserable in what I was doing, but there was still the willing to put up with that misery and that hurt just to not to lose the authority that I had built. So, and and that's where some of the where Mary had helped me with accepted and rejected efforts to get through the bankruptcy, to get through closing my practice down. And I'm just now, I mean, I need to take clients. I do pay, but I'm just now building some of my authority. But there's also something that I've noticed, and I don't know, I think it might be a gender related thing, but I think there's a sense of sometimes you actually have more authority than you think you've got. In terms of more expertise, because I'd be going to these, famous astrologers and stuff. I'd go to their thing and listening to them, how they're doing research. I'm like, well, wait a minute. And I hope it's not ego or pride, but I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, I can do that. Why am I not having the confidence that I can have when I mean, that's not saying that there's, I haven't learned stuff and I haven't learned a lot of stuff, but there's a certain amount of, thinking that, some people, they can know a little bit and they have a whole lot of self-confidence over it. And then some people, and some people, I guess I have to have a whole lot before I actually feel like I know anything. And it's, and that's something, or maybe that's, I don't know, that is, I guess.
No, thank you for that. And I'm fiddling with a diagram, okay? That's sort of really relevant because, we say, we sort of present authority as a box, okay? Now, our own vision of our authority needs to be a bit bigger than it actually is, because that's what we're aspiring to, okay? So that is the sort of black circle, I'm sorry, the black square. So we need to have that sense that, yeah, what we're capable of, who we are, what we've got to offer is that bit bigger than what it really is. That's a sort of healthy aspiration, okay? And I think that really fits what you were saying. Hey, I'm as good as you. And another way we look at mental illness, if what we think we're capable of is much, much more than what it really is, if the sort of diagram is sort of like out there, okay? That sort of delusion, that's, yeah, I think I'm Napoleon, or I think I'm Barack Obama. But the other thing is a square that's inside the circle. I'm sorry, inside the box. That's fear, okay? I mean, if our view of our own authority is less than what it really is, we're operating out of fear. And that can be a sort of, that can shrink our authority to establish and expand our authority, we need we need that bit of ambition where we're stretching ourselves to the point where, okay, I'm taking this on and I'm confident I can do it. And maybe I can't, but we need that stretch. Yeah, Mary.
I just wanted to say that's exactly what it feels like about being able to say I'm an actress. That's
Yeah.
definitely a little bit bigger than the box. I've been on
Yeah.
stage for 1.5 hours, you know.
Yeah.
But there was something extraordinarily different in that I really, before I went on stage, I wasn't 100% sure I could do it. And when I got on stage and I had that audience and I was lit up and carried it off, even though I only knew the outline and I only knew about a quarter of it word for word. And that was, it's very hard to put into words, and the boxes really help. You know, that it's like I can glow and I can say, you know, I'm happy to say fledgling, but I can say I'm an actress now from one performance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've been published once in a junior high newspaper, so I guess I'm a writer. I just have to be braver about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I had an article published on dolphins and how we shouldn't hunt tuna because it takes the dolphins' food away.
Yeah. Yeah, and we need to protect our authority, okay? We need to know at times it will be protected. But, you know, the article's being published, there can be another one, right? Yeah.
Right.
That's what I was just going to say about the brilliant use of the word structure, because it is a series of physical facts, you know, things you help make happen in the world, like the one article or the one show, and then you build on that slightly bigger box than the box of what you've actually got to take the next step. And you can use this concept to say what exactly you said, like, I guess I could go on and build my authority more. And you said you were writing a book, right? You said that here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm writing 3 books. My brain works that way. 3 books at once.
So I think part of the way where you can marry the need for building authority with some of the other tools is what Peter will be talking about with the pendulum, because you have to bridge that gap. I know a lot about this from having a whole life marred by mental illness. You have to bridge the gap between where you want to end up and the fact that right now you don't have much authority, and take the different steps and build that structure so that you gradually move into a place where, you know, now people don't look at me and say, oh my God, she spent all her life. Well, they wouldn't know unless I told them. I tell them on purpose to use the power of the tool of transparency. But just looking at me, you wouldn't know I'd been kind of disabled for a lot of my adult life, because I built that structure and I've got my degree and I've got my license and I've got my courses and my experience in domestic violence and some published things. And so now I have a structure when I didn't for most of my adult life.
Yeah. Well, my pendulum hasn't swung in 3 years, but my sponsor and I were talking about it. She's like, 6 years ago, kid, you were like a monkey from a tree. But now you've grown so much emotionally. And so that was really adding to my authority, that the pendulum's been center and I'm doing better.
Elizabeth.
I'm just thinking the diagram with the boxes is really helpful, because it helps me to see that what was going on when I was, in my opinion, misdiagnosed, was that my perceived authority, self-perceived, was so much smaller than my actual authority that I was actually diagnosed with a personality disorder from it. And that diagnosis was profoundly unhelpful. It added nothing to my life, but to see, okay, I'm perceiving my authority as much smaller than it is.
Yeah, yeah,
That is useful.
yeah. I mean, that touches me because the misdiagnosis, and I think I've told the story at other times here. You know, I remember the kid's name, Teddy Mahood. And he'd been misdiagnosed, sorry. And that was at 16 or 15, I can't remember, 15 and a half. Let alone, you know, that. And I could stop it. I stopped that. I worked with him for a lot of time. You know, it's the way, one of the ways we talk about authority is this: we have the authority if we're carrying out the responsibility of it. Authority equals responsibility. We're not carrying out the responsibility, we don't have the authority. That particular bit of it, you know, that's quite demanding, that's harsh. But we're also looking at how, and of course it comes down to a whole lot of other things in Pellin, like persona gap and passive listening to feedback. Because who did not tell that professional, or who, that he or she was making a lot of wrong diagnoses? Because and who is telling the profession that maybe diagnosis is not a good idea, or maybe it's not as good idea as it's presented. Because, and if you take that concept, you know, the psychiatric categories and how much authority they carry, you know, careers are made on and broken on them, and someone like me comes along and others and say, hey, maybe that whole process is wrong. You know, maybe those words are not useful. At least that will give someone who comes along, and the way you said, you know, it was a deep, profound statement. I did not find that diagnosis helpful. Okay. Bang. And yeah, Mary.
Well, I was thinking about when I worked as a counsellor in a mental health community centre, and sometimes one of the clients, you know, some of the clients that were difficult to fit in boxes would have their diagnosis changed. And I remember one man coming back and just breaking down in tears because his diagnosis had changed to something that he was told as the diagnosis was changed, and you will have this for life. There's nothing we can do about it, kind of thing. And he, well, I started a peer counselling group, and he was in it because he was very bright, and he used to draw pictures of himself with antennae. What that meant was he was like super sensitive to outside picking up people's feelings because he'd had to avoid being beaten up by his mother. And I had a few people in this little peer counselling group like that. And we did a presentation on the pendulum. I mean, he was just really good. He had all this people talent, right? They all had this people talent because they were so sensitive as a result of trauma and stuff. And Peter knows this, but other people don't. We taught to the staff what they could earn their continuing education units, they taught the pendulum. I didn't. They taught the pendulum. They led the exercises of the professionals in this big community mental health centre in them looking at their pendulums. And we went to a couple of other places, and this is what I was doing. I was trying to give them feelings of accomplishment. I was trying to help them develop a mini authority, unfortunately, the way the system works, as peer-to-peer, peer counsellors. And it was very gratifying and satisfying, but not seeing talent in people because you can put diagnostic labels on them is a very painful part of my field for me.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Okay.
where passive listening to hard feedback and the sound gap comes along, and I think that those sort of stories and the fact that I think it's the case just about now that the psychiatric categories can't be questioned, that authority, the calluses around that authority are too strong. They won't look at the hurt they're causing. And I think that's a reason that on some ordinary Gallup poll sort of opinion, the psychiatric and psychotherapeutic professions aren't held in the regard that I feel they could be held if the insights and wisdom they had to offer weren't clouded by this lousy, common sense opinion. Well, my cousin got this diagnosis put on him and it didn't seem to fit. I think the fact we're not inside critical enough is about authority that gets, the box get too calloused. So the only people who a profession will listen to are the other people of that profession. And of course, you get that tragically in religion. The way the Catholic Church had a authority that was so calloused. It was sort of common knowledge. Don't hang around Father John. That's not a very good idea. Village communities in Ireland and Italy, they knew about this. Let's make sure there's some adults in the room at that time. All sorts of stuff. And yet, they would not let in the feedback that as an organization, I'm surprised to use the word, needed to police its own members who might be committing sexual abuse. In some odd way, it didn't cross their mind. We'll look after it, and okay, we need to move Father John to a village the other side of the country, and that's what they did. And the damage, it's historical now, isn't it? It's just historical. The damage that system caused, and I guess that's connecting up, the negative side of authority, and connecting up authority, callousing, and there's certainly connecting up both those. Okay, we come to an end. We just do a ending names and locations. I'm Peter. I'm in Norfolk, England. And yeah, I guess I really want to keep struggling with this one. And thank you for saying you like the diagram, because I want to develop it and I get scrappy about it and don't do it. I'll just say this to you, Cynthia. I've really been holding on to this. Cynthia says she doesn't do paper. So I don't need to turn out paper. I can just send her pictures, okay? Yeah, it gave me some hope, okay? Hope of developing some new authority, okay? Anyway, that's me. Do you want to go next, Stacey?
Yes. Thank you guys for encouraging me, and I look forward to developing more authority in my writing.
Yeah. Shelley?
Hi, sorry, I realized my son's name is on the screen, so he borrowed the iPad, so I apologize, I didn't play that. Anyway, I really relate because of my mood swings and the pendulum stuff, that when I was younger, how it took away my authority, right? Whatever I was doing, sitting, acting, and people were, the leaders of the place I was studying were saying, oh, there's something really wrong. Is she on drugs? So all of these demeaning things that happened to me and my journey that way when I was young really stopped me in my tracks. So I can really relate to how authority, you might feel like you have it, but then it gets lost. I have clients that have that, like when they're developing a performance and then they get physically ill, be emotional illness or physical illness, which takes them away from that which they had, that purpose. And then all of a sudden they're lost. So I can really relate to helping people and helping myself try and regain authority. For me, emotional, distress caused so much insecurity, right? It's like a huge stigma to have a breakdown. And it affected me for decades. So, I think there's a huge thing there. And still with mental illness and stigma, and then imagine if, someone is Black or Latino and they don't have as much privilege as I do, how that affects them. The double whammy,
Yeah.
So I can really relate. Anyway, I forgot to say I'm Shelley and I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth from Eugene, Oregon. I feel like I've done a whole lot of talking this time, so thanks for your patience. And I really enjoyed getting to look at this tool.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Mary?
I'm Mary. I'm in Rosarito Beach, Mexico, and I thought right at the top of the forum, Peter starts saying what authority is, and it makes me want to cry. I didn't know that was going to happen. And he's using words I've heard so many times before, and it's almost like a feeling of being in love. I just love how, for me personally, hearing the tools over and over again is always enriching. And then, of course, in the discussion, all these points and things came up from this very talented and expressive, intelligent group, I'm saying to you all, that are fresh, completely fresh. So it's a wonderful experience of, feeling the pleasure of the familiar tool in your hand, and then all these new ways it's being used. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Yeah. Cynthia?
I am Cynthia. I'm in Kankakee, Illinois, and I have my own project. I guess I'm going to announce at least my first step. Mary's been pushing me a little in terms of something that this language can be building up my authority, is doing a YouTube channel. So I'm gonna I probably won't do it I have to pick the right time for it to start, but maybe I need to make the first step. So I'm saying that out now as something that to hold myself accountable for that.
Okay, thank you for that. No, that's as we're stopping, that's really relevant because how there are new opportunities to develop our authority. Well, I'm talking to you. None of you are in England. There are ways to develop our authority because of technology. So let's grab them. You have authority, okay. Okay, I'll see you Wednesday. Okay, bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Peter. Bye, Mary.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.
Coming.
Thank you.